confirm it's. You're good.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Power Addicts November, another super edition of Power Platform Goodness brought to you by the Power Addicts team. Tonight, we've got some excellent guests, this time from the other side of my world, a place that I tried to dig to as a child on a regular basis with nothing more than a garden trowel. I got not very far, but it felt like I was getting a long way the whole time. We have Tay and we have Jared, who are, between them, I worked out earlier on, have about 30 years of experience in developing and in CRM and in Power Platform and kind of all of that. They both look ridiculously young because they've been in New Zealand. Jared is an import coming from South Africa, and Tay is an export, having fled the beautiful place that we all know as New Zealand and living in Sydney, Australia, which, as we all know, is nowhere near as good. I'm sorry to everybody in Australia, but that's just the way it is for a Brit. So, but first, before we get started, we really have to say congratulations, because the Power Platform has 6 new fabulous MVPs this month. We've got Krishna, we've got Matt Collins-Jones, we've got Claire Carmichael, Mary Thompson, Kashun, and Erlyn. And I had to say, like, just the UK getting 2 new ones is big for us. But Matt Collins-Jones, that achievement of doing a video every day, he over more than years, 366 flow videos. If it ain't there, it doesn't exist, and you probably can't do it. So definitely check him out. He is I like to call him the Shane Young of flow. He's got everything you could possibly ever need to know. So congratulations to all those fantastic new MVPs. Please follow them on Twitter, read their blogs, go and show them some love, because that's what they're there for. They're there to help you. They're there to love you, and show them some love, please. Thank you very much. Right, so without further ado, we're going to do some PCFs and some components and some jiggery pokery, and Tay is going to take us through her amazing presentation. So Tay, go for it. What are you going to show us? What have you got for us?
All right, thanks, Keith. Let me just quickly share my screen. Should work. We just tested it. Hold on.
Tell us what consultancy are you from, Tay? Where do you work? Who are you working for?
I actually work for Blackmores, but I'll actually cover all of that. I've got a deck for that. Hold on. Hold on. Let me get the second screen. Can you see everyone?
Can now.
Can now? Okay, awesome. Okay. So, hey guys, thank you so much for inviting me to join this chat at PowerAddicts Hangout. I'm so excited to be here. So, just a little intro about myself. My name is Tarim Han, and yep, we got the pronunciation right. People know me as Tay. Thank you. And then I'm actually based in Sydney, Australia, currently working as Dynamics 365 Application Specialist at Blackmores. Blackmores is a vitamin supplement company, and we concentrate on the health of and well-being of people. I've been a developer and a consultant for more than a decade, mostly working with Microsoft technology. And I'm a C# developer at heart. And recent years, I've been playing a lot with client-side frameworks like React and Angular. And if you want to know more about me, you can visit me on these, or not visit me, but visit my blog and connect me on LinkedIn. So, okay, can anyone guess what we're going to talk about? It's very obviously very clear on this. And so, as you can see, I absolutely love working with PCF. So let's chat about it, okay? Next slide. So just to recap, and for those who are not familiar with PCF, PCF stands for Power Apps Component Framework. It's a framework for building custom controls for your Power Apps application. They are reusable code components, so once it's implemented, they can be easily deployed to multiple environments and can be configured in many locations in your Power Apps. Currently, you can have your PCF in your model-driven app and Canvas app, And I believe that PCF on PowerAddicts portal is definitely coming. It is definitely a pro developer tool. It helps us developers to extend and enhance PowerAddicts solutions beyond what is available out of the box. Before moving on to demos, I saw to keep the introduction short, I just tackle one big question. Why? Why would you do this? Why would you build one of these? So it does, as I said before, extend out-of-the-box behavior, and with great power comes great responsibility. So you shouldn't be implementing PCF anytime you want. You should really only consider them when you reach the limits of what out-of-the-box controls can do, right? I still find the best PCF controls are the ones that you don't actually know that it's there, especially in the model-driven app where the PCF controls are configured in the place and sits next to the out-of-the-box control. And the fact that it can do that, it provides such a seamless user experience, right? And I guess that is one of the main contributing factors as to why we use a lot of that at Blackmores. And just to give that best user experience in one platform. Although implementing PCF controls can be a bit scary and has a bit of learning curve, but it does end up boosting the productivity of the developer, because a lot of the boilerplating and the scaffolding is done by the tool. And depending on how complex your control is, we can leverage using modern frameworks like React or Angular, any other libraries, they can actually do a lot of the heavy lifting for us, right? Reusability is another key factor, where in the case of generic control, you can implement it once and then reuse them anywhere you like. Even more than once in a form. Yes, I am looking at you, embedded Canvas app. And then I think PCF Gallery is like the prime example of this reusability, right? Where the community is building like reusable controls and empowering all the power addicts out there to go and use these controls, right? What I mean by integrated component lifecycle is a really powerful thing about PCF is that it gets loaded at the same context as any other out-of-the-box control. So it gets rendered as part of the host DOM structure. So these controls actually then participate in the host's lifecycle, and I'll demonstrate this later. And then the last information is that these controls are built into solution components, so easily packaged up in solutions, much like any other customizations. And so you can pick your favorite DevOps tools to deploy to downstream environments, right? Cool. So 3 general patterns that I actually encountered while I was actually building a lot of these controls. One is controls that enhance the out-of-the-box behavior or display. These would be something like regex validators, maps, colorful option pickers. And then number 2 are controls that aid the data entry and in the result, boost the productivity of the user. So these are things like end-to-end selector, color picker, WYSIWYG editors, and things like that. And then the third one is more complex and feature controls that integrates with external services. Right. Demos. My main goal was not to bore you with slides, but I wanted to showcase some of the real-world PCF controls and the applications of it. Hopefully, you will see 1 or 2 general patterns I had mentioned earlier in these demos. And so my first demo is a feature control that integrates external services. I just wanted to give you some context prior to demoing this. Before we started building this control, users will actually spend hours in Excel sheets. Yeah, favorite tool, to modify the data they've extracted from an external system to present to their customers. And this process also involved manually adjusting the data back into the external system as well. We often encounter these kind of scenarios where you need to be able to view and update the external system's data from your own application. So we want to solve this without any disruption to the user experience, or delegating to another app, or any data synchronization, right? So to demo this, I built a sales order PCF control. It's actually a linear version of a control I built for work, where I replaced the backend infrastructure for demoing purposes. So here's a diagram of what it does. So we have a PCF control configured on the model-driven app. It exposes sales order data that is maintained in a separate system, where the data is captured in the SQL database in Azure. And then the data is exposed by the web API, hosted in Azure App Services, which has been secured by the Azure Active Directory. The user must be authenticated in order to consume the web API, and the access token that is generated gets used for calling the web API. Okay, so enough slides. Let's see it in action, right? Can you see my screen? This? Awesome. All right, so I've got like some accounts set up. So if I was to go into one of these, as you can see, this is the sales order PCM control I built using React. You can see that the UI aspect of this control is very familiar. So if I was to navigate, all of this is pulling information from the SQL database using the web API. And because I'm utilizing the Fabric UI framework, the same UI framework that Microsoft uses to build their applications like the model-driven apps and other Office apps, all this, like it looks so native and seamless. So you can do all kinds of stuff, like filtering the data and all that kind of stuff. Oh, actually, I must have put in something else to clear that data. And also go back to update this and the SQL database as well. And it will get color coded depending on what the status of the delivery status is. All right, so I think what is also that's really good is that the fact that this dialog, when you actually pop it up, the fact that it can actually go outside the boundaries of this control is that this PCF control actually gets rendered as part of the parent zone, right? So yeah, so that's really neat, right? So I'm just gonna go back. Oh, sorry, I went too far. And demonstrate the next PCF control. The next PCF control I like to demonstrate is based on a real-world PCF control I built for work, which had the requirement to collect performance data from users based on certain scoring criteria set up as records in CDS. And for this, we decided to use adapted cards along with actionable messages and PCF control. The idea was to be able to come up with a one UI schema to render control on all three platforms. So that being Microsoft Teams, Outlook, and model-driven PowerAddicts as PCF, right? I've extended this concept a little bit further as a fun exercise and explored a new adapted card templating. So this is what I'm going to demo now. Just as a recap, in case anyone is unfamiliar with adaptive card and how it works, currently works. Adaptive cards are platform agnostic snippets of UI authored in JSON. The JSON is then transformed into native UI, either by the host platform that it gets surfaced or by using the SDK. Previously, there was no separation between the data and the layout. But what the adaptive card templating does is that it actually provides that separation between the actual layout and the actual data. And I'll demonstrate this. Let me go to my screen again and hop over to form demo. So this is like demo data, right? So I just want to illustrate this for let's say submit a form, and I want to manage all the answers and questions and everything like that in CDS in terms of data. And so if I go to adaptive cards template, so this is what I mean by authoring the template once, and you can actually use this template payload in multiple times. You can see from this JSON, there are all these little placeholders where the data will be bound later on. I actually wanted to make this really exciting, and I actually used a binding, advanced binding scope where the actual data actually drives the UI. So it is actually literally a form engine, right? So you can see that the input type name, which is label, and text multi-line. You'll see all of this in reference to the records later, but you can see that this particular one renders out text block. This one does the input text and so on and so forth. And so if I go to the form templates, so this is where all the data gets collected to be later generated into a data payload, right? So the users can come in here and then set up all their stuff. So I've got a November check-in survey, and then I've got all these questions that I want to ask the users, right? And then you can actually set up like question choices as well. So you can like say, oh, okay, so for this particular question, I've got, you know, these bunch of choices that I can choose from. So if I come to form, this is the record or the entity which actually binds all of that information together, right? And so here you have pointing to the form template, which is essentially pointing where this data is coming from. And then we got the adaptive card template, which is the basic survey template that I actually showed you before. I have configured the form recipient, so these are the people who's going to get it. And then once the status of this particular form gets published, this data JSON gets generated from all the data that you have in CDS. And I'm just going to be really adventurous, and I'm going to delete one of these things. And you never do deletion on demos, right? Just in case if it doesn't get regenerated. And so I'm just going to run this flow. So essentially what it does is this form, the flow will go off, and let's see if it's going to work. Let's see. Run the flow, and then let's wait for it. I'm just going to wait something to appear on my mail. Look, it should go pop. There you go, pop. And then I get that particular request in my Outlook. And this is the actionable messages, right? And then also I get that same one in my Teams as well. Awesome, right? And so all this information that you've seen, the data that gets bind to what was like the templating, and it gets all generated here. But the really cool thing is that you can actually export this in PowerAddicts as well as a PCF control. Yay, you know. So that's really cool. So I'm just gonna you know, type in some stuff. I'm feeling my energy level is super okay, and I'm making something awesome in PowerAddicts. Yeah, and I prioritize my well-being because, you know, I just do. And then I usually get 7 hours sleep. So anyways, if I submit this form, it will just say thank you for submitting. And if I refresh this, I've got some plugin magic that actually happens, and then it will go and generate all the answers as records in CDS. So what we do for like in real life, but because this is a demo purposes, we actually do have like a lovely report that actually services all this data as well. And then and also I use some different ways to actually handle the message so that it actually does come back with an adaptive card as a response as well. Cool. All right, so that's that. So I'm going to go to the next demo. And so this is the last demo that I want to do. So this is a real world PCF control as well. The main purpose of this control is to aid users to visualize key set of data in dashboard fashion on your phone. The main requirement is that it should be responsive, interactive, and performant. So you could argue that I could have done this using embedded Canvas app or Power BI, but I don't think I would have been able to tick all three boxes. And I'll show you why. So let me just go back to my demo environment, and then I've got the entity templates here. So this actually follows I love templating. So it follows that concept as well. So I actually got a custom schema for how I want the PCF to be rendered. So this JSON essentially defines what are some of the displays and where the information is going to come from. So I've got a few cards set up in my schema, like multi-value set card, which actually reads from a fetch XML. I got a persona card, two value set card. This will all make sense when I actually show you the demo here. So just remember this part and then go to the projects. And if I go into the projects record, I'll explain all this. So this is the PCF control. And that whole PCF control is actually rendered using that entity template schema and bound to this data JSON, essentially. So there's this form script magic going on here. So it essentially looks at, okay, what does this PCF control need in terms of data by looking at the entity template JSON. And then it collects all the information and puts it as a JSON on the form, where the form, the PCF actually binds to that, and then it renders one of these things. So awesome. So this actually highlights the beauty of PCF control because it actually gets notifications from its parent pool. So essentially, whatever I do here and whatever I got bound, it will reflect on this. So say, for example, the project health score is at 60%, but actually I'm doing much better than that. And so if I was to go and say 80, then this would reflect like directly on the PCF control. So the users actually can see the interaction and see the visualization all in the same go, right? And then it actually does look at, say, marketing. I've got configured a different color for that record. But if I was to actually change out that and then go and do a research and development, then I get a purple color because that's what I configured. So all of this is actually driven by like this particular JSON that sits on the form. And yeah, so this is what I want to demo for today. And yeah, so if you have any questions or anything that you want to discuss, just ping me and I'll be happy to answer anything.
I can tell you now the chat has gone absolutely ballistic since you've been demoing.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
We've been wowed on every single level. The adaptive cards thing was just bonkers. I just think it's perfect from start to finish. Well done.
Oh, thank you.
There's so much you can have fun, and if you ever feel down, just take a little screenshot of that particular chat window there, and it'll make you feel better because everyone's loving what you've done.
Oh, awesome! Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on. I really want to thank like Gita and sorry if I'm not pronouncing it correctly, Gita, and then Eliza and Elaine for being able to come onto this hangout today. So thank you.
And it's
I think
good.
what struck me about this work is just that it's not just like you're a fantastic ideas engine and like you're doing stuff that we've not seen before, but have the elegance of execution with the consistent UI and thinking about the user experience first. Like that is just level. Like, yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
So
if these were like the top 3 you picked, hey, I can't wait to see what other PCFs you have. in your back pocket. Like you picked the top 3 that you wanted to showcase today, like within 15 minutes, and we're already mind blown by it. I just can't wait to see what else you've got in store.
There's actually some PCF control I'm actually working on at the moment, which I'm not allowed to show. And that one's actually really cool because I actually get to use a bit of Redux and all that state management of the stuff as well. So but yeah, I can't show it. So maybe I'll just spin up another demo one just to do that. But yeah.
Fantastic.
Cool.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. So without further ado, and I do feel slightly sorry for you, Jared, following that. But I'm sure it's going to be equally as fantastic. So, Jared, take it away. What have you got for us? Tell us about yourself, all that kind of wonderful stuff.
Cool. So as most demos go, when you're wanting to start it, everything falls apart. And as the demo gods have produced or has presented to me today, my PowerPoint has crashed. So I can't seem to get my slide deck to pop up. So I'm just going to speak through what I am, what I do, what I represent, and kind of how I managed to get to where I am at the moment, if that's all right. So my name's Jared. I represent Theta across in New Zealand. So we're based across four of the major towns. So we're based in Auckland, Christchurch, Wellington, and myself, I'm based in the Bay of Plenty in Tauranga. So naturally, I get the best weather of everyone. And my story really starts. When I was in high school, I started to work a lot with Photoshop. So I'd Photoshop myself riding sharks and sitting on the back of tigers and lions, and I'd have all these great images of me doing these fantastic things that I've never done in my life. And in doing so, I learned the application fairly intricately, and I landed my first job as not actually a developer, but in graphic design. So I started working for an internet marketing company, designing a whole heap of their websites. And my job was really to hand over the designs to some of the developers to go and build. And it was kind of at that point where I started to see how they started to work with it, that it really became intriguing to me. So I began to work with PHP, and I started to learn developing in PHP, and absolutely loved what I did, and subsequently moved off to a new employment facility. And within 6 months, I had all their websites built up and running. Everything was running smoothly, and I got bored. So the company that I had joined had themselves their Dynamics CRM division. They were still practicing CRM4 in the days. So I became associated with them anyway, because I used some of the graphic design aspects to create them little custom icons and some funny things like that. And I got looking at what they did, and again the next bug sort of bit me. So I requested a transfer into their department if they would take me on, which they did. And for day one, when I first arrived, I was introduced to CRM, which I didn't even know what it stood for. And I was given, my first task was to build a view. And I sat there for about 3 hours looking at this application, trying to understand what its purpose was. And what are we now, 10, 12 years later? I still find sometimes myself wondering what the purpose is, but I always manage to get an answer these days. So why does that make any sense as to why I'm bringing it up? Throughout every project I've ever worked on or implemented, I've always tried to bring across some design aspects into this thing. So as Tay's just gone and shown us some really amazing work, I've tried to do something similar in my everyday kind of implementations. And whether it's just in the old days, just a little web resource with an HTML form or a button that they click, which would call the SDK to do something. Whether it was just that, or whether it was building the first hashtag first, portal into Dynamics before ADX became a thing. That's where I started to use sort of my skills across the board. So when PowerApps was first announced, I got really excited because now there's this amazing application that's coming that can connect on top of the application that we work with every day. It's going to make integration super easy. It's going to let me tie up all these loose connections that never really made sense to me. And as soon as it landed, it was everything that I thought it might be. It had its limitations. It had a lot of limitations, and from day one, I started to try and figure out how we could fix it. So, or at least get workarounds for some of these limitations. And one of those items, which I'll be demonstrating today, came to me really was a shower thought. I was working. I think it was 4 Power Apps that I needed to demonstrate in the week. All of them were similar, but they were all for different potential customers. And the one bane that I found with Power Apps was whenever you build a Canvas app, it's obviously going to default you to the lovely blue, which no one tends to like to use. And when looking at the themes that you've got as options, they're fairly limiting. You've got about, I think, between 5 and 10 of them, and they're really just set to main sort of primary colors. So I got thinking, how can we change this? And there's the option to open up every single component and adjust, for example, the full settings. You can set it to a specific color. However, you need to understand what the RGB colors are, so the red, green, blue, the values for those, and in order to get the correct color that you're looking for. So what I did, and I will start to present my screen. What I did was I came up with an idea, and the idea looks like this. Okay, so what it is, this is a component. So it's not a PCF control. It's actually a component library that is in preview mode with Power Apps. So what is the component library? It's a reusable component that you can drag and drop into your Power Apps. So usually you would use this for something like a form or a button or a little widget that you would like to employ across multiple screens, and its main purpose is to be reusable. So I thought, let's go and build this with the purpose of extracting it into a solution and to be able to import it within other environments. So the first thing I wanted to do was to be able to define the RGB colors in a way that a user that is not technical would be able to understand and use. And I did that using slider bars. So I've got them set with a minimum and a maximum value between 0 and 255, which represents the RGB values. And as I slide these across, you're going to notice that the colors in this preview are going to start to adjust with them. Now, there is a small preview of a form which I added just for laughs, but within the component, I've got a couple of parameters which are a couple of input parameters and a couple of output parameters as well. Now, the output parameters are being set to the colors that we can see running down the left-hand side here. So I've got a main color which we define, and I've got 2 shades lighter and 2 shades darker, and that's kind of the starting point of what I thought. Let's get a palette based off of one color. There are future plans to expand this to allow you to change each one individually, but for now it's just going to work off of an individual color. So show you how this works. So if I drag my green bar across to the right, you'll notice how, oops, You'll notice how the colors change. And the same would apply if I move the red bar and the blue. So you can see how it starts to fuse these three colors together to get us to a color that we want. Now, it does give our values down the right-hand side. So if we do know the RGB colors for our potential customer, we'd be able to adjust this accordingly. However, the purpose of this is to show you how it's been implemented. Now, I've got a site, I've got a Canvas app, which has been built specifically for today. So it is fairly lightweight. It contains a couple of pages that we're going to work with, 3 of which are different customers with different logos. Okay, so we're going to get to that in a second. The other components that make up this entire solution are we've got a flow. Flow is what's determining how we store the values of each of these or of each of the sliders. So we need to be able. It's one thing to be able to set the color on the Power App. We need to be able to store that value somewhere that the next time any user logs in, the app is updated. But also that also gives us the ability to change it and update that again. So what I've used for that to store the values is one of the new features as well, the environment variables. So the beauty with the environment variables is that you are able to include them in a solution. So exhibit A, you're able to include it with the rest of the solution so that when you deploy it from one environment to another, it'll maintain the value or update it accordingly. So again, there's more. There are another couple of future plans which will take the value that we're using for the Power App and allow you to update the customer engagement platform as well. So you'll know that you can update the theme within customer engagement, uses hexadecimal values. So I have a couple of pieces in the works which are converting the RGBs or the RGB values into hexadecimal, and it will allow you to publish that straight into Dynamics as well. And that would flow across with the environment variables. So without further ado, let me take you through into the app. So I'm going to run it from here. Okay, so right now we've got the option to switch between the sites. I've also got a settings option at the top right-hand corner here. The settings page takes us to the settings page takes us to the component, and this will allow us to go and update it or retrieve the values. Now you'll see that we've retrieved some values that have been set in the environment at the moment. These were what we had adjusted earlier. So if I go ahead and bring these back to a sort of a shade of brown, I can go here and update the styles. So this will kick off a flow, which will go and update that environment variable in the solution. So before I move off, I'm going to keep this page open, and we're going to open up the environment variable. And you'll notice that the values here should align to the values that we've got in the Power App. So a 74, a 52, and a 35. Okay, so that's been updated accordingly. Should we change it or decide that we're going to implement a new Power App to another customer or another proof of concept coming up, we would simply adjust it and make that update as well. So we would expect to see those 3 values flowing through, 113, 80, and 122. There we go. So that's gone and updated our variables now. Now, the other side of this is as I'm making those updates, the moment we go back into the app, it's going to retrieve from Flow. It's going to retrieve the environment variables. It'll separate each of the values for the RGB, and it will then produce them as, or Flow will then return those values back to the component, which will then apply the theme or apply the colors across the board. So if, for example, and it's intended that this is only done sort of once really by an administrator. Not everyone would have access to this page. If the administrator had updated the values and you came in to open the app, it would retrieve from Dynamics or from the environment variable, it would retrieve the latest values and it would simply update your app. So if I close out here now and we go into any of these examples, the colors that we've set up here should flow across. So there we go. We can see that some of the buttons are rating symbols. They've all been applied with that same purple color. And if I open up this, for example, is that not going to take us? Oh dear. All right, we'll come back to that in a second. What I want to do, let's see, we've got a broken link there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just adjust the options now again for you. So if I were to bring in a blue, or let's go with more of a green theme, we update it, we close off, and we go to any of the pages, you'll see the entire theme has now been updated. And this would typically apply to all the pages. I do have, if you don't mind me just jumping back here. Apologies for that. I've got a couple of additional pages here, which you can see how the theme, it just carries forward with the rest of the Power App. So the way that it's implemented is there is an initial amount of effort that needs to be completed. It wouldn't take any more effort than what you would usually do. However, it just requires setting of properties of, for example, the fill property or the border color, etc. So for the components that we want to follow with the flow, if I open up and have a look at the flow or the fill property of it, you'll see that I've got the option, or I've set it to appstyle.mainColor, and the appstyle.mainColor is an output parameter from our component. So if I just select the component here, you can see the different the different properties that we've got available. So there you can see our main color. We've got a light 30, a light 60, a dark 30, and a dark 60. That refers to the percentage gradient on each one. But really, we've got our app style component here, which has been imported. So it's been imported from the components, and based on the values here, these set up, or these provide us the outputs, which you can see being utilized within some of these components. So, and you can see that. So if I were to change this, for example, if I felt the main color was looking a little bit too light, and I decided to go with the dark 60, for example, you can see it's now taken on a different color on board, and I'd want to apply that to, for example, all the buttons. So I'd want to say, select each of the buttons, the full property, and say, right, I want to use appstyle.dark60, and it automatically applies. Now, the fact that we're using an environment variable also allows somebody that it allows us to set up the Canvas app to basically not allow anyone to change it if that's the way we want it. And it would be as simple matter of updating the value here. So if we do know the RGB codes, we can simply just update this to, for example, 130, 200, and let's do 50. I'm not sure what we're going to get out of that. But now that that's been updated, and we go back into the app, we should see some new colors coming in. Oops. All right. So there you go. So it's been updated with a green. I see there is a slight little bit of a bug involved there. Now, to do it in terms of the flow, it's a fairly straightforward flow. It's taking into account an RGB variable, which comes from which we pass across from PowerApps. So within PowerApps, we collate the RGB values together, pass it as a string, comma separated, and we then take that value, and that's where we go in. We figure out what definitions we've got within the solution. We grab the variable from it. The variable that I've used is hard-coded, well, is named aptly, and I'm searching on the name. And this flow is called from two different points. It's called from the button that the one where we're updating the style, as well as on load of the app. So on load of the app, I present keyword get if I'm trying to retrieve, and if I'm not presenting get, it will get an actual RGB figure, in which case we go and update the record and reply back with the values. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are anything that anyone's burning to ask.
I think that's awesome. I'm myself right at this moment in time, I'm working on almost exactly the same thing. So I've been paying very close attention. I think theming across larger organizations is a massive headache. I mean, just imagine like the cost of rolling out Power Apps, and then someone in marketing does a rebrand and you want to take all your apps with it. I mean, you have to make that easy. You can't make that difficult. And this goes such a long way to addressing that problem. And it's a great use of components as well. Are you using this in anger at the moment in your deployments?
Yes, I've got it in one of my deployments.
Cool.
I've used it. Excuse me. I've used it across quite a few proof of concepts, and it has made the proof of concept a lot easier and quicker to get across the line. And it just adds a heap of value to be able to theme it according to who the potential customer is. It's nothing worse than walking into a customer that's got a red logo, and you walk in and show them an entirely blue app. It doesn't always bode well.
Yeah, it's that. It goes back to what Tay demoed. It's like if it doesn't look right, people just aren't going to pay for it. Like in this day and age, what they get in their phone and their pocket is it all looks great. And if we turn up with the default blue app, it just looks. Yeah. And especially if someone's seen Power Apps before, they just instantly see it and say, well, they didn't make an effort. Next.
Yeah, that's it.
No matter what cool stuff it does, no matter how cool it is.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I'm happy to share it with you if you'd like to steal some of the ideas. More than happy to send this out.
That's a huge community contribution, man. That's massive love.
Good
stuff. What's next in component land for you? What's the next one you're going to build? Any ideas? Anything brewing away in the background?
Yeah, I'm a man of many thoughts, and very few of them ever make it across the morning. And 9 times out of 10, I have great ideas at about 3 a.m. in the morning when my kids are up, and I will wake up. I'll go to bed knowing exactly what I want to do, and by the morning I've forgotten it already. So I've got some ideas. I'm I'll share some.
Surely
share
that's
some
a
of them.
build an app to solve that problem, no?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's actually a great idea, that. But,
Has anyone got any questions for our two presenters today? Anyone got anything burning in the chat? Let's have a little look.
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions there for Jared.
let's have a look.
Christy says, is there any reason you choose to use Flow to change the RGB instead of updating the RGB on click?
It's a good question. I guess the main reason why is before I decided to look at using the before I started looking at using environmental variables, I had it set up with SharePoint. So I had a flow that was configured to build up a JSON string and to then decode it for me and return the values back through Power Automate. So that's the main reason why I did it.
Yeah. So Jamie asks, would it be any more efficient to store the RGB values as separate R, G, and B values independently of one another?
I actually built it like that first time around. And again, with Power Automate, it just added additional steps to the flow where I could just call a very simple function to split up the values. I know that they're always in the same, between the application and flow, they're always going to be in the same order because that's how I'm sending it across. That's the only reason why.
Awesome. So that almost brings us to an end of to PowerAddicts this month, but we have some shout outs. I understand we've got some user groups coming up. Geith, you got a couple of those? I know Anton was asking earlier on that we had one that we wanted to share.
Yes, it's the M365 Chicago event that's coming up this Friday. It's a virtual event, so I'll drop in the link over here, and we have a bunch of amazing speakers lined up. I know we have April on the call here. She is speaking. She has a session out there. And I know Daniel Christian has one, and we have a bunch of really good speakers out there and some amazing content. So be sure to check that out if you want to register and be part of it.
Yep, we've got next week, we've got the Virtual Power Group Scotland doing a Power Apps working offline in Canvas apps, a subject that has pained me before. So if you want to know how to do offline in Canvas, go and watch that, and then don't do it whenever a client asks you. We've got Power Apps Kids on the 17th, and on the 18th, we've got the Cambridge D365 user group as well. And then just, like, make sure that when you come to this one, bring a bottle of wine and some bread. We have the French Power Platform Summit, which, if you're not going to turn up with the quintessential baguette and eat some really exquisite food whilst you're watching that one, then you're losing out massively. So do come and watch that. And then we've got Global Con 4 and a bunch of FinOps stuff happening later in the month. Please do check out the Virtual Events Hub. It is the one-stop shop for all your Power Platform community needs. So do check that one out. I'll pop that in the chat right now. Well, Jamie's already done it because he's a champion.
Just one more to add, the Power Apps community call is also there on November 18th. Yep, that's another one to look out for because I'm presenting.
There's just so much content; it's unbelievable. Who would have thought in lockdown all we would do is make videos? So, I mean, thank you very much for all attending. If anyone's got anything they want to say or like any shout outs they want to give, please give them. Our next event should be on Tuesday, the 8th of December, prior to Christmas. Am I working that one out right, gang? I think I am. It wasn't the 15th, was it? It should be Tuesday the 8th.
Yeah, I mean 8th or 15th. We are still. It's the second anniversary of Power Addicts. So if you want to do something different, we'll see what all we can we are able to get done by the next month. But yeah, look out for that. More information. As I mentioned, there's a website, wearepoweraddicts.com. I'll put it again. Go ahead and just subscribe to that so that you get the event updates. Because the thing is, we have to take in every speaker's timings, and we want to be respectful of the time zone. So timings keep changing. That's why we put it almost at the last minute, 1 week before, around about that. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks very much for everyone, and see you on the next one.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cool. Thank you so much.